Someone's chatted. Yes, so just a couple of housekeeping. Everyone is on mute. If you have a question, please use the Q&A icon at the bottom to ask your questions. We will answer the questions at the end. And the recording will be sent out to everyone who is registered and is attending. The recording along with the slides and the reports will be sent out actually. So, don't worry about that. Having said that, I think I am going to go and get started. My name is Archisha Meehan and I manage business development at Fedmine. The agenda today is a little bit about Fedmine. I'll introduce our speakers today, Pat and Prakash, and we will then get into this very informative webinar that, Pat and Prakash have put together. So Fedmine was founded actually in 2004 to provide the prime contractors, federal agencies, and support firms convenient and simplified access to the most comprehensive federal contract data sets that exist today within the industry. We recently were acquired by GovSpend, which is the largest provider of purchase orders within the state, local, and education industry. And we now are able to provide our clients the best in federal and SLED. What do we do? What are our data sets? It's on our website too, but FPDS is our primary data set, and I always say it's like the spine of the platform, and we integrate that with all these other various data sets and sources, including SAM, USA spending, OMB, GAO protests, and actually a multitude of other data sets. Truly what our platform does and what our clients use Fedmine for is to analyze and simplify the complex federal business landscape in real time. We provide you visibility into the spend data and allow you to look at what your addressable market of business opportunities is. So let me now introduce our speakers. Pat is a business development and federal programs professional with more than 28 years of experience in engineering, construction, and the environmental markets. He is a retired lieutenant colonel and a bioenvironmental engineer with a tremendous knowledge of DoD funding and the contract acquisition process. I think I have had the pleasure of knowing him for, oh my God, 3-4 years. And every time I talk to Pat, I kid you not, I've learned something new. So I think, thank you, Pat, for doing this presentation for us. Joining him is Prakash, a business development professional and a federal program manager with, again, more than 30 years of experience in the capture management, strategic partnership, teaming, joint venture, and mentor-protege programs, specifically in the 8A and the SDB programs positioning. He leads the RFP analysis, capture planning, and proposal writing efforts at Kenall, Inc., which is based in Texas. So again, thank you, Prakash, for doing this along with Pat. So Pat and Prakash, I am now going to hand over the presentation to you.
All righty, thank you very much. And if you would, do you have some feedback on the 5 questions you could maybe summarize for us here quickly?
Absolutely, great thing. So the first question was, does your firm track the data and report it at least quarterly? It's almost like an equal, 57-43 split, with 57 saying yes. The next question was, is there a capture planning process that all managers follow? Only 43% said yes to that. In terms of industry, we have 20% from the IT industry, 43 from A&E, 7 from environmental, 3 from construction, and 27% from others. How many employees in the firm? I would say 50% have said more than 200. 27% have said less than 25. And yep. And the last question was, which I know we wanted to be in the end, but the question was, do you think you can win when the first time you find out about an opportunity is on sam.gov? And we have 73% that have replied no.
Okay, very good. All righty.
Yep.
And very few people on construction, which is in a way not a bad situation. This particular example that we're going to use is really geared to the non-construction industry. But with that, let me just kind of jump into it. Those of you who have been on webinars where I have done them in the past know that what we really see as the greatest value to this is the slides that you get afterwards with the material. So I'm just going to somewhat briefly go through the slides. The second part of the presentation is some Fedmine reports that we'll walk through. I think I have 5 or 6 of them, and then the last is, oh, the poll just popped up here, and I assume I can minimize that, which I did.
Yes.
Yeah, and anyway, the last part is Prakash will walk you through some specifics and also a tool that we use here at Kenall. So with that said, let's go to the next slide.
Okay, sorry, I am
That's
getting
all right.
started.
Yeah, in terms of an overview of the process, even if you're a 10 to 15 employee company, and I know we have a small group that are of that size, and of course, it sounds like the majority are over 200, but regardless, capture planning is really suited best for a team. There's just too much opportunity to make huge mistakes based on your own personal bias. We all have them. And also just missing things. And also on the bullet here, whoop, we're jumping around here.
Sorry.
You're on the right one now, that's okay. Yeah. And really you should start capture planning as soon as you can. In the example that we're going to get to here in the second half of the presentation, we would start it certainly on an industry day, or in some cases, even before an industry day. Go ahead, and the next slide. Well, it does work, and I mean, it really works great because you stop chasing contracts where you just don't have a chance. And it also enables you to focus on tasks to increase your odds of winning where you're pursuing something where you clearly do have a chance. So nothing new, no big mystery. Next slide. We do an example both with we do an example from the St. Paul district. It's a civil works opportunity. It's an SF 330 proposal. It would apply to just about everybody who's on this call, with the exception of construction, where the proposal's different, so therefore the capture planning is a little bit different, but the bulk of what we talk about applies to everybody. And again, the opportunity is St. Paul. It's an SF 330. Prakash will talk about starting when you hear about it at an industry day, but as I said before, it's easy to get intel directly from clients and other sources, and it is not unusual for a firm, especially an incumbent with good relationships, to start 2 years out. And why would you start 2 years out? Well, because you can influence the evaluation criteria. What better reason to start early? Next slide. Oh, go ahead to yeah, there you go. The first phase of capture planning, take a look at the opportunity. I list 5 ways to get information on the opportunity. Apparently we have a good number of folks who have a decent amount of experience in capture planning, and as they know firsthand, this list is not comprehensive. The goal is always the same, to make sure the firm's decision makers are all on the same page as to the opportunity details. And I should quickly add, typically when you do this first briefing after doing the opportunity assessment, the decision makers are not on the same page. Next slide. And for that reason, usually we do a go, no go very early on. Whoever is involved in capture planning, usually a minimum of 3 employees, preferably, pray to God, no more than 6. After 6, it's hard to get anything done. But regardless, we do the opportunity assessment, the capture team does that, and then we do the initial go, no go. And I have a note there, usually form driven. And again, depending upon the size of the company, that is also always a direct proportionality to how complex the go, no go is. And that's really all I needed to say on that. Go ahead to the next slide. So we've looked at the opportunity. Now we're going to look at where we stack up next to the opportunity. The key is to put together an objective look at our firm's quals versus the opportunity. Do we have the projects? Do we have the CPARs? If it's an SF330 or a full-fledged proposal, do we have the resumes, et cetera, et cetera? Do we have the relationships? Nothing new there, and we'll circle back and talk about some specifics as we roll through the examples. Next slide. External assessment. Who's the competition? And within the competition, and I think this is really more important than just knowing who it is, who's trending up, who's trending down. We do data mining. We do an awful lot of data mining within Kenall. I'll show you a little bit about what we do. I don't really have a feel for how many of folks on this presentation either use Fedmine or some other tool. It's used very heavily at Kenall. And also, as part of the external assessment, what are our chances of winning? Next slide. In the example of the reports, data mining reports, one thing that's going to jump out immediately when you look at the very first report, you're going to see a huge bias with the St. Paul district. That's the typical kind of thing that we're trying to draw out in the client assessment. Not just how they have awarded contracts in the past, but what are there any patterns besides that in terms of their evaluation process? The third bullet, I just want to pause and try to explain it. There are some, and I think of one Air Force organization in particular, that is heavily contracting officer driven. There are some Navy clients that are heavily contract officer driven. Many installation opportunities are not all, but many are not contracting officer driven. They are civil engineering driven. So those are the kinds of things that we need to know in the client assessment. And of course, if either we need to get or we already have an advocate, that's a very important aspect. Next slide. I put this, if you're a good speaker, you got to put one slide up that nobody can read. This is my one slide that I'm sure half of you can't read, and it's in there just as a reference, the notional winner. Sometimes I get questions, people have never heard that term. It's the ideal or the perfect winner. And what you're trying to do, as the capture team is trying to do, is to say, okay, if we were perfect, what would we look like? And then, of course, you compare yourself to that perfect winner, and then you compare the competition to the perfect winner. And again, Archie, so this is really for reference sake, in case somebody didn't know what I meant by a notional winner, and you can just go to the next slide. The whole point of setting up a notional winner is to do a gap analysis. You have the perfect competing firm. Where do you stack up against them? Or I'm sorry, against that ideal firm? Where does the competition stack up? That defines gaps. And then the next step is, well, how do we fill those gaps? And typically on an SF330, unlike a construction, the first go-to move is, of course, teaming. And with that, we'll go to the next slide, and I'll let you hit the links, Archisa, and as they pop up, go ahead and hit the first one. The example that I said we're using is an actual contract where there are incumbents right now with the St. Paul district. And if you'll just blow that up a little bit, and I'm right there, should be all that I need. All I wanted to show them, Archisa, was that in this particular example, and we used a date range, we did fiscal 18 to present. And if you look, yeah, there you go. She's moving the cursor. You can see the date range. We did not down select on PSC codes. We just did 54, 13, 30. And you see that we have actually six firms there. And when we dug down deeper, we found out that of those, three of them were on the MATOC that we're looking at as a recompete. And I'll make some comments on the others without going into a whole lot of detail. If you'll just want to go to the next report, what you saw in the first report. And again, I know that I'm flying through this, but you're going to get copies of all this. And you can just, there you go, that's fine. I don't need it any larger. What we've done in the past is we've actually walked the audience through how we do the searches. It takes about 15 to 20 seconds to set it up. And if all goes perfect, it comes back in about 10 to 20 seconds. I just skip that over. If you use Fedmine, you know how to do it. If you don't have Fedmine, me showing you, it's not going to help you. So I'm just going right to reports. These are the firms in the order in which they had the most awards. What is the value of going through this? The value of going through this is multiple. Number one, if you look at the contract description, it tells you what kind of work is being awarded. And I don't need you to go there, Archisa. I mean, I don't need you to hit details, but there is a detail. And if you would hit that tab on Fedmine, you get all kinds of additional details on this particular task order that are extremely helpful. If you would just go to the next report, Short Elliott Hendrickson was one. And then we look at, and I hope I don't mispronounce this, but Gestra Stanley, they were number two. And you can blow this up. The interesting thing that I want to point out is that I thought they would be a MATOC holder. This is an older contract. And note, it's a joint venture. So there was an incumbent small business, a joint venture with Stanley. And then they had the recompete in 18, and they had 3 awardees on the MATOC. And you can go to the next report, which is the third company. So the incumbent, and I don't need you to go back, the incumbent was a small business joint ventured with Stanley. Then they do not the recompete, but they do a MATOC, large business MATOC, and who wins? Not a surprise, Stanley. We're going to see that name again. And once again, we're looking at these for the reasons I said. We want to try to understand what is the district awarding specifically on the task orders. If you'll just minimize this and go to the next report, which is the last one of the MATOCs, and it's HDR Bergman JV. And same thing, we are interested in looking at a couple of things. Number one, HDR is a huge company, and they have the least amount of work on this. HDR happens to be a really wonderful, loyal, and extremely helpful client to Kenall. So we would be going back to HDR and we would be asking them a little bit of information like, hey, what's up, doc? Usually you guys are number 1 or number 2, so there's just information to be had. Now, if you just go back to the summary, you can minimize this. And I want to just point something out that I said in the beginning. There are a total of 4 firms we're looking at. Actually, you jumped a little too quick on me, but that's okay. Leave it here. 3 of the 4, there you go. 3 of the 4 are joint ventures. 3 of the 4 are joint ventures. So, I mean, there's a key piece of information. And is this the Mississippi Valley summary? We kind of got out of sync here.
Yes,
No,
yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Is this?
This is the
I-
first slide. Yeah,
If you could just go back, I think you and I are just a hair out of sync, and I can make sure we're locked in here. Other 5 districts, that's the one that I wanted. What we would always do is to say to ourselves, well, are there other clients, in this case, other 4 districts that would have a similar mission? Well, it's called the Mississippi Valley Division. So I'm kind of assuming that everybody is doing work that has something to do with the Mississippi River or contributaries. We would automatically look at all of the districts, which is what we did here. We did one search for all of the districts that are in that division. And I'm going to ask you to blow that up because I'm not sure everybody can see it. I want to show the top 10 prime contractors, and the top 10 prime contractors. Guess what's missing? Interestingly enough, now we looked at everybody but St. Paul on this, and Stanley, which is holding 2 contracts with St. Paul, is not on this. That's a real interesting piece of information. We would typically dig down into that a little bit deeper. Archisa, I'm going to stop there. I know there are some other reports. I think I'm starting to beat this to death. The key point is, I don't know how you do capture planning if data mining is not one of the key pillars of it. I just blew through a couple of reports. There's a whole lot of data mining that we do on this, and I'll take questions at the end. For the sake of time, I think I'll just end it right there. And if you want to go back to the last 2 slides, I'll hit those, and let's get on with Prakash's role. We do it once a month religiously when we are probably beyond 3 months out. When we get inside 3 months, we're going to go every other week. But when we get inside a month, we're once a week in terms of our meetings. Go to the next slide. I have one more comment, but I'll make it there. And my last comment is the greatest value, well, a little bit of exaggeration, a huge value of really being thorough in your capture planning is you get to ask intelligent questions. So when you're asking teaming partners about teaming, you're coming back, you're opening up with a lot of data-led quantitative discussion, which is really helpful. And the last part is, and I'm going to say this because I came out of the government, the thing I couldn't stand is when a contractor came in and said to me, what can you tell me about this opportunity? My answer was typically nothing. If you didn't care enough to do research and come in and ask me a whole bunch of intelligent questions, I didn't care enough to give you intelligent answers. If you came in and you said to me, look, I saw that Stanley holds 2 of the 4 contractors. Can you tell me anything specific about the work that they're doing that allow them to differentiate? You couldn't shut me up. Anyway, I kind of ran long there, and I really want to get to Prakash's stuff. So with that, I'll take questions at the end, and you can move forward. Thank you very much. Just go to the next slide. Oh, I didn't do this one. This is still mine. Go to the next slide. I talk too much. Okay, this is Prakash.
Thank you, Pat, and hello. Pat shared a lot of information in the last few minutes. Let me try to summarize some of the things that Pat mentioned and add a little bit details of my own. Basically, capture planning discussion is specifically related to a federal opportunity with the aim of preparing and responding to a synopsis that calls for an SF-330 response. Also, what you're going to hear is very fundamental in nature. Now, we're making an attempt in this presentation to provide you with some basic understanding of the process or steps involved in capture planning, and primarily introduce you to some of the tools, specifically Fedmine data, that has benefited Kenall during our capture planning process. In simple terms, capture planning are actions we take before a synopsis is released. And during the initial stages of capture planning, we try to understand several things, but the two that I'd like to draw out is, number one being customer requirements. Pat covered this when he spoke about client assessment. It's very important to know what the customer expects out of this contract. And number two is trying to understand our own qualifications and capabilities relevant to this requirement. Pat also covered this when he spoke about internal assessment. During this exercise of understanding our qualifications and capabilities relevant to the requirement, what we will find is that we have areas that we have good quals on, areas that we have little quals, and definitely areas that we do not have any quals at all. So identifying our own strengths and weaknesses is an important step in the capture planning process. And let me emphasize that this step should be completely unbiased. Now, the question we try to answer is, are our qualifications enough to meet the requirements of the synopsis and enough to give us a win? Very often what happens is when we have internal discussions with our team, there's always someone that we need to convince that the qualifications we have is not enough to win based on the evaluation factors, or we are just shy of scoring high. So option then becomes we need to look at adding a team member that can complement and enhance our qualifications. Hence, it becomes very important to understand what is it we as a prime bring to the table and what do we need team members to provide. And let me give you an example. Say we are looking at the skill set of our people to put resumes together. Now, we focus on evaluating and finding answers for ourselves. Does this person meet the resume requirements? One, in the type of work called out. And two, does this person have appropriate and current professional certifications or licenses? So when we put a resume together, we need to make sure that it meets all the requirements of the synopsis and basically answers the mail. Now, second biggest area that needs more time to evaluate are project descriptions. Do we have projects that meet the project description requirements? What are we focused on? About 5 to 6 elements. Now, first, we look at the type and complexity of the projects we have and evaluate them against the requirements. Now, do these projects meet the requirements in terms of facility type or the service that is called out in the synopsis? As an example, the Excel we are going to look at in a few minutes is for civil works requirement. Now, can I get away by showing a project that is primarily facilities? No, because it's not going to score high as a civil works project. It's facilities matches, the services matches, but the type is what they're looking for is civil works. Now, another point to consider is, are the projects within the time frame and do they fall under the dollar threshold requirement? And the location where the project is performed, is it within the geographic area? Is it within the AOR? If not, is it with the same client? And how about the CPAR ratings? There was CPAR ratings on the slide earlier. So there we are looking for, do we have projects that have associated CPARs that rate satisfactory or better? So when we are unbiased at evaluating our own qualifications, we are able to identify our shortcomings. We can overcome those shortcomings by teaming with other firms. The goal is to team with firms that help us meet the needs of the requirement and the evaluation factors that will be detailed in the synopsis. So basically, we construct a team that will give us the qualifications and capabilities that we do not have as an offerer. So our goal is to win every proposal we submit. Otherwise, why would we spend the time and effort to go after an opportunity, right? Since we initiated capture planning, our win rate, say in the last 2 years, has improved to about 70%. Now, with this intro, let's look at the 3 Excel sheets. Primarily, these Excel sheets will depict the progression of capture planning over a 9-month period. Yeah, here is the first Excel sheet. So this is primarily a sheet that was put together by attending the industry day. Now, there are ways to track an opportunity and not wait for industry day, but let's just begin at the industry day because it's simpler to follow. Now, what do we do at the industry day? We go to the industry day. We have already done some homework about the possible opportunity. We have looked at the data about this procurement or a related procurement on Fedmine. And at the industry day, we are taking some notes. We are also interacting with other attendees. A couple of reasons to do that is, one, you want to know about other firms and their capabilities. And essentially what you're doing is you're gauging your competition. Now, after the industry day, you're back at the office and we develop the spreadsheet, the one you are seeing right now. Basically, what do I have? I have requirements on one side that I heard about in the industry day. On the other side are the disciplines that we think we need to perform on this contract. Now, what are those boxes that are checked below? This is where whether I'm a prime offerer or I'm in a JV with another firm, have identified what is it that I can provide. But you also see there are several boxes that are not checked. And this is where your SWOT analysis comes in. And I have clearly identified, well, we don't have any skill set in coastal erosion. So remember from one of the slides Pat presented, we do not want to have any bias in evaluating our own capabilities. So more than one person should always be involved in analyzing and understanding the requirement and matching up our own firm capabilities. An unbiased analysis is an important exercise. Once we are able to identify our biggest W in the SWOT analysis, the weakness, we are in a position to bring on a team member that will help us overcome that weakness. By proper teaming, we increase our chances of winning. I'm pretty sure everybody will agree with that. This process of evaluation is ongoing until the sources sought is released. Now, let's see what actions we take when the sources sought is released. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, here we analyze the information that was contained in the sources sought. By now, we have looked at the scope and other contract requirements from a previous contractor if one exists. Fedmine is a great place to go to find that information. Now, sometimes it is good to research different districts, like Pat pointed out, or agencies that may have procured something similar. Again, Fedmine is a one-stop shop to aid in your research. Now, what are we looking at on this Excel spreadsheet? We have gathered all the information that was in the sources sought, and basically we expanded the spreadsheet from the industry day into what you're looking at. We have more specific information about the requirement. See, we went from knowing about 6 requirements and 4 disciplines during the industry day to about 11 requirements and 12 disciplines. We go back and check the box. The yellow column there, shallow and deep draft navigation, we do not have any of the team members that we have identified that offers that. Now, we are also trying to marry up the project descriptions. We figure, okay, these are some of the projects we need to provide, and there are 2 areas within that project descriptions that we see we may not have a good, qualified, and relevant project. So all of this evaluation happens on a weekly basis, and we make a lot of progress, so it is evolving as each week goes by. Remember, we are maybe about 6 months out from the synopsis release. So in the next several weeks, we are finalizing many things. Most importantly, we are looking to see if we have any deficiencies and evaluating adding on more team members. We are formulating ideas as to the proposal contents, especially section H contents. We identify specific key team member roles and responsibilities. We start formulating the proposal writing assignments and every other step that is involved in writing the proposal. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is the synopsis slide, meaning now I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the dates that were on these sheets. Of course, you're going to get a copy of this and you can track it. It's about 7 months since the sources sought was released. Synopsis is out. Now, when the synopsis is out on sam.gov, we now have 30 days to prepare and submit our proposal. So within the first 3 days, we prepare this detailed matrix, like the one you see on the screen right now. Then we have an initial kickoff with the internal team. And together we review the metrics. We also bring on some key team members into the discussion. Do you see how the synopsis shows a few surprises? This last few columns there, specialist required, we had never heard of something like that during the industry day or during the sources sought. So these are the surprises when you look at the synopsis, and you should always be prepared and expect to be surprised. Now, basically what happened here is that the requirements grew from 11 to 20 different requirements. Although the number of disciplines did not really change from the synopsis, we called out 14 specialty disciplines. That's almost 100% additional requirements. So what we started at the industry day has essentially grown to almost 3 times in terms of requirements and disciplines. With the synopsis, we now specifically know about what they're asking, what we need to provide, and how our proposal will be scored, because there's that evaluation factors. It is extremely important to know and understand these evaluation factors. What is the emphasis? What is the order of flow of information? How well does our section H address the requirements that have been called out? The biggest question is, can we write a proposal that will answer the mail? So basically, capture planning ends when the synopsis is released, and now you have a bigger fish to fry. You have 30 days to write a winning proposal. Now, we did a poll earlier asking how many people thought that the first time you see the requirement on sam.gov, you're in a position to write a winning proposal. 73% said no, and that is what I expected it to be. So basically, we could not have known all the requirements that were synopsized if we did not do any capture planning. If we didn't get started 6-9 months before the synopsis, we wouldn't have done a lot of things that have happened in the last 9 months. And trying to do the capture planning along with writing the proposal in the 30 short days we have when the synopsis is out is almost going to become an impossible task. So at Kenall, we think if we didn't do enough capture planning, we may not be in a position to write a winning proposal. So we always do capture planning. Now, you also need to understand that every requirement is going to be different. But the capture planning process is primarily the same. The more of capture planning we do, the more we learn, and we simply get better at it. The result of capture planning, at least for us, has been we have started winning more. And as we get good at it in the following years, I think we are going to start winning even more. This essentially concludes my presentations, and I think Archisha is going to go to question and answers, and we will try to answer some of your questions. Thank you.
Yeah, that was really, really informative, and I'm hoping, just for seeing this whole process and the thinking that goes in is a lot. I mean, and I know everyone who's on the phone would definitely be familiar with it, but it's always nice for us also from Fedmine to understand and how it works. We actually have a chat that came in, and I'm going to read it. It says, we are in a JV that recently no-goed an AE IDIQ MATOC opportunity we had been tracking for well over a year, because the USACE district solicitation was advertised. It had much greater specificity for the project criteria that would get greater consideration than was the case in the prior solicitation or indicated in the sources sought or mentioned at the industry day. There was no way to respond to this dramatic change with new teaming prior to proposal due. Despite engaging the district, none of our intel indicated the recompete would be significantly different. Question: what are the best methods to identify significant change requirements other than mining past solicitations and engaging the client to prevent having to no-go due to surprise provisions?
Well, I think I may actually know what opportunity he's talking about, or he or she are talking about, and there is no good answer. That's really the most important thing I would have to say. And the second would be, there was some opportunity. There's always opportunity to get more face time. If you can get face time with the senior person, and I'm talking about somebody who's typically a division chief, not a section or a branch chief, you may or you may not get that information. It happens. It doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't even happen often, but when it happens, it's very frustrating. So I understand, especially if you're already in a JV. And I do think I know what one he's talking about. And we were surprised too, but we are going for it. I don't have any other comment, Prakash.
No, I have nothing to add to that. Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing, but what do we do?
You can go to the next one.
I don't see any other questions. Leela, am I
Oh.
missing anything? I'm not sure if, yeah, I don't see.
I don't see any others.
All right. Thank you.
Someone had asked will we provide a copy of the slides, and the slides and recording from today will be sent out this afternoon. So stand by for those.
Okay, I mean, I think Pat and Prakash, you guys did an amazing job that we have no questions because I think
All right.
you
Thank you
answered
very much.
everything. Thank you very much, and
Right.
yeah, and stay tuned for the next for the slides, an email from all of us. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Oh.
you.
Thank you.
you.